Hey, so this video is about cellular respiration, which is the opposite of photosynthesis. Instead of making food, it's breaking down food and turning it into energy. So how does your breakfast, or maybe lunch, provide the energy to get you through biology class today? Well, first, what's your food made of? So the food we eat is generally split into 3 different categories. It has carbohydrates, proteins, or fats, or maybe a mixture of all 3 of those. So on your note guide, hopefully you have that with you, 9.1 note guide, check out number 1. What are the 3 main components of your food? Again, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And if you notice in these pictures, all of these macromolecules have long chains of carbon atoms. So in this one, this is a glucose molecule. We've got carbon in black. In the proteins, the carbons are green. This is kind of a small amino acid. Most proteins have lots more carbon-carbon bonds. And then fats are just packed full of long chains of carbons. So long chains of carbons can break apart and combine with oxygen in a reaction that releases a lot of energy and some carbon dioxide. So here's an example of a big explosion at an oil field or something. I don't know. But these long chains of carbon, when they break apart, you just add a little bit of heat to get it started in that oxygen, and it just massive energy release. So here's some examples of different carbon-containing compounds that we burn. Fossil fuels like natural gas, wood. For a lot of our campfires, wood's full of lots of carbon compounds. Candle wax is pretty similar to the structure of fats. And sugar? Yeah, sugar burns. So just like these other fuels, food molecules contain chemical energy also, and that chemical energy is released when their bonds are broken. But cells don't simply burn food to release the energy as light and heat like these other fuel sources. We wouldn't want little tiny fires in all of our cells. That wouldn't be comfortable. So instead, our cells break down the food molecules gradually, little bits at a time, capturing those little bits of energy at key steps and storing it in ATP. So instead of just one big explosion in our cell every time we break down a glucose molecule, we break down little bits and store that energy, capture it as ATP. So there's a special word for the way we measure the chemical energy stored in food, and that's with a unit called a calorie. So if you've ever read your nutrition facts on a food label, you're probably familiar with calories. So the technical definition of a calorie, you'll want to write this down, is the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water, that's just a little bit of water, by 1 degree Celsius. So that's just a small unit of heat, just enough to raise that little bit of water by 1 degree. It's not much. So when we talk about food energy, excuse me, we're going to use the word calorie. Notice it has a capital C. So calorie with a capital C is actually a kilocalorie, or 1,000 calories with a small c. So keep that in mind. Now the energy contained in different foods varies depending on what it's made of course. And these aren't exact, but roughly 1 gram of carbohydrates gives you about 4 calories with a capital C. 1 gram of protein, also about 4 calories. 1 gram of fat, though, is 9 calories. Fat has way more energy in it, like more than twice as much. So you can kind of compare different food types to how many calories they have. So if you're shooting for 500 calories in a meal, you can't eat very much of this oily stuff. cheese, nuts, butter, fried foods. That's going to fill up your calorie quota really quick. And then things with lots of carbohydrates like potatoes, rice, beans. Those have not as many calories as fat, but still you can't eat too many of them. If you're eating lean meat like maybe turkey, grilled chicken, fish, you can eat a bit more of that before you hit your 500 calories. And then fruits and veggies, they don't have very many calories at all. So if you're trying to watch your calories, then you can just fill up on these, and they have great vitamins and minerals. So good food choice there, fruits and veggies. So here's our table where we are going to practice finding out how many calories are in a serving of these different foods. So the way you find this is, here's your food. 1 apple has got 0 grams of protein, 22 grams of carbohydrates, and 0 grams of fat. So we don't have to worry about the fats or the proteins. We've got 22 grams of carbohydrates, and each carbohydrate has about 4 calories in it. Then all we have to do is multiply 22 by 4, and we get the answer here for calories. So let's see, pull out my handy dandy calculator. You might want to pause the movie and go grab one if you don't have one with you. So 22 carbohydrates, and then 4 calories per gram. So 22 times 4 is 88. So on your paper, write down here that an apple has 88 calories. Now for bacon, we've got some protein and we've got some fat. So we're going to find out how many calories in our protein. So that will be 5 times, over here we have 4 calories in a gram of protein. So 5 times 4, that would be 20 calories for just the protein part. But we also have 6 grams of fat. So 6 grams of fat times 9 is 54. So now we have to add those two together. So we've got the 20 calories for the protein and then 54 for the fat. Add those together and we'll have 74 calories in our bacon. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video, get out your calculator, and fill out the rest of these. Remember to multiply the grams by how many calories are in that type. So this one would be 3 times 4 plus your calories for your carbohydrates, so 23 times 4, plus the calories for your fat, 13 times 9. So go ahead and try those out. Now when you're all done with those, I want you to take a look at your numbers and decide which food will give you the most energy. So which one has the highest amount of calories in it? And then which one is the least? Which food can you eat that doesn't fill you up on calories? Alright, moving on. So we're on the last couple questions on our note guide. Cellular respiration is the name of the process that releases energy from our food, and it requires the presence of oxygen. So cellular respiration, kind of a big word. What does the word respiration make you think of? Normally, if I hear respiration, I think breathing in, right? So breathing is also called respiration, and that's because they're related. So what do you breathe in? Well, all the air, of course, but what my body is using in that breath is the oxygen, right? We need to breathe oxygen. So we're breathing in oxygen, and then what do we breathe out? Carbon dioxide. So if you can remember that when you respire, when you're breathing, you breathe in, or you need oxygen, and then you breathe out, or you get rid of carbon dioxide, then you'll be able to remember the formula for cellular respiration, which is oxygen plus glucose, or you could substitute any of those other macromolecules, so it could be any type of food really, but the simplest way to think of it is just the glucose and sugar that we eat. And you mix those together, and you get your reactions where you capture that energy in ATP. But what's left over at the end of the process is carbon dioxide. We breathe that out. That's the waste product. Some water as well. And then here's the energy that we captured and we keep for our cells to use. So make sure you write this down. Cellular respiration, number 7, the chemical equation. Oxygen plus glucose makes carbon dioxide and water. And then our cells get to use the energy. So this isn't just given out, but it's kept inside of our cells for our cells to use as ATP. So just like we learned in photosynthesis, it doesn't happen all at once, right? Respiration is a few different steps. And you can kind of summarize those into 3 different stages. And don't worry right now about what they're called, but what I want you to know is the first stage just happens in the cytoplasm, and it only gives a little bit of energy. But the second and third stage, the ones that give you the most energy, happen inside this special organelle. You know what it's called? The mitochondria. So remember, we learned that's kind of the powerhouse of our cells. So plant cells have this too, plants and animals. We all have mitochondria, and this is where the bulk of cellular respiration takes place. So that's why mitochondria is such an important organelle. So just like the chloroplast is a special organelle in plants that helps them do photosynthesis because it's got all the right enzymes and stuff they need, the mitochondria has all the stuff that we need for cellular respiration to be able to get a lot of ATP out of the food we eat. So that's your last question. What organelle is required for respiration? Mitochondria.